Today, the Pentax PC35AF is a camera released in 1982. It was the first autofocus Pentax camera for 35mm. There were a few different versions. The AFM was the film winder and special editions, but basically it's a 35mm lens, f2.8. It's fully autofocus. It's hard to do anything else in that respect. It will tell you the distance inside the viewfinder when you take the picture. It will also tell you through a green indicator if the exposure is okay or if you have to release the flash like this. Yep. So not much more. Maybe simply there's a button to increase in case of backlight, to increase to 1.5 the exposure, and also the self-timer button, which will, once you release the trigger, you'll see a LED that will blink at the end before here and beep at the same time. So a traditional self-timer. Nothing much more, basically. The button to release the film once the film is finished, and the rewind lever here, and the button for the ISO sensitivity here. So let's go see a few examples and come back later for a few more details. The first picture, actually the first pictures are going to be in colors, and I'll go on to black and white, but that's with Santa Color 100. Basically, it's Kodak Aero Color film, put in rolls by a third party, but it's a great film. And here I usually do not landscape format photographs, but portrait. But here's one from the Lake Léman, also known as the Lake Geneva for tourists. And yeah, the lens is really a great lens. I've been using that camera for a long time. I really like it's a very precise lens, and the camera works very well. It's very good at taking the focus where it needs to, and exposition is always pretty spot on. So yeah. Two more examples here, now in portrait mode. Here I think we can really see how crisp this lens is. And of course the film is quite important in the rendering. It's a really interesting film in that sense. So I would also recommend the film, but if you don't have the lens and you don't have the camera to follow, it's doesn't work. And here I think it's really good examples of how crisp those pictures can come out of this Pentax PC35 AF camera. Really a camera I don't use as much as I should, but every time I use it, I really feel compelled to go back to it a little bit more. Here I took two examples. Maybe the photo on the left not very interesting per se. I use it I wanted to take it quickly I like the colors. There's something I liked in that scene. But I think it's also a really good example of how the camera really handles high contrast situations, the focus. Here I really put out my camera really rapidly out of my pocket. It was a one-handed use, and it works. And also, the picture on the right, that's a composition I really worked a little bit more on. I think this lens is good enough for me to really think about those kinds of situations and compositions, knowing that the result will be really at their best. This camera really serves the film it has in. Two more examples. It's always still the same film. We'll only have 2 rolls this time. This was quite a recent shoot, but I wanted to try this camera again in different situations. The picture on the left, that you can really see the geometry is really nice, really good respect of vertical lines, and obviously horizontal lines, even so there's no real horizontal lines here. But good exposition control, and yeah, the precision of that lens is really great. I can't repeat it enough. On the right, however, I like that photo, but if you look at this sort of blob, light blob below on the bottom part of the picture, that's actually a lens flare. So that's what you might get if you have the sun straight into the lens, well, slightly on the side. Here it's on the right. Very horizontal, but still very good preservation of the quality of the image overall. Yeah, really a pleasure to use this camera. I really think it's a classic, kind of not so well-known classic camera. Here again, last picture in color. That's in a forest in the Jura Mountains between France and Switzerland. It really serves the film underneath very well, and you can see how the lens is really precise. It really gives something very crisp, very good contrast and respect of colors. On the image on the right, that's going back to black and white. Well, going to black and white with a classic film, which is the Kodak T-Max 100. That's an old roll, actually, a few years back, but I think it gives good examples. Here I liked the pigeon, one of the pigeons, and I think it gives an overall good idea of how this lens reacts in black and white, and how the camera overall reacts. Here are 2 pictures. The picture on the right, I actually scratched it when developing the film outside of the camera, so the camera has nothing to do with the scratching of the film. But I think those 2 pictures, the one on the right, that's Oslo Opera, and on the left, that's you can see that one of the towers of Barbican in London behind, and it's actually in front of the Museum of London, which will soon move to another place. But here again, to give you a good idea of how great this lens is, and how great the camera reacts to different light conditions, and how the focus is usually spot on. Really interesting camera in that sense. It seems simple and quite basic, but it works. It's a tank. And here, yeah, 2 images I found funny because I don't think they're very interesting as such. But on the left, that's me taking a picture with an Olympus XA of the photographer who's taking my picture, who's a friend. And on the right, that's him who's taking a picture with the XA while I'm taking a picture with the PC35 AF. I think it's interesting because we're working with autofocus, we're using flash, 2 different kind of conditions at the same moment, basically. And we see that the focus is spot on. I didn't take 5 of those pictures. He didn't take 5 either. And even with the glass on the forefront, well, maybe it just managed and maybe it was luck, but I always think this camera is really good at doing what it's meant for. Point and shoot. And yeah, hopefully that gave you a better idea of the results you can get with this classic camera. Very robust body too, very good ergonomics. So yeah. Okay, so that Pentax AF camera is interesting. As I said before, there were different versions, but basically the most notable element was this motorized winder that you could screw on the side. Here I'm going to screw it on. So basically you screwed it on, you had this small rotating element that releases, that doesn't let you rewind manually anymore, and here it goes, the engine works, and then the camera is ready to go. Basically it makes it a little bit more bulky, but then you have auto winding. So yeah, interesting camera. It's stuck between basically 25 ISO and 400 ISO in terms of film sensitivity. But yeah, a pretty potent camera to use from the old days. See you next time.